All right, good evening. My name is Catherine and I work with SEB Housing. This is the information session for the two affordable rental units being offered at the Enon in Beverly, Massachusetts. So the purpose of this session is to give a little bit of background information on the available unit. I'll also cover the application, the eligibility and lottery processes, and also what to expect after the lottery itself is run. So if you have any questions, if you're watching this after the fact, if you have questions for SEB Housing, feel free to reach out to us at info@sebhousing.com. That's the quickest way to get in touch with us, but you can also give us a call as well. So this is a live session. It's being recorded, and it will be saved to SEB Housing's YouTube channel so that anyone who is watching after the fact is able to see the session if they have additional questions on the property. Excuse me. So just for some background information on who we are. So SEB Housing, we are an off-site affordable housing consulting group. We're not the on-site management team for the building. We've been hired by the developer or the management team to market the affordable unit, conduct this information session, collect and review applications to determine applicants' eligibility, and to eventually run the lottery. So in the initial phases, we'll be your main contact rather than the management team, but then further along in the process, on-site management staff at the Enon will be taking over as your main point of contact. So there's a few steps in the process. The first is to apply for the lottery and be found eligible or to qualify for the affordable housing program based off of what you have self-reported on your application. So you'll be in touch with SEB Housing. We can answer any questions for you during that time. If you have questions on the application itself, we'll process your application. We'll run the lottery. The second step in the process is immediately following the lottery, SEB Housing will sort the results of the lottery, and you'll have a position on a waiting list. If your waiting list position is high enough, you'll then be put in contact with the leasing office for them to determine your lease eligibility. And that is separate from the SEB Housing screening. So it's similar to screenings that you may have gone through before to rent an apartment. So they might do credit check, background check, reference checks, that sort of thing. And if you're found to be lease eligible, you can reserve a unit with the property management team. The third step in the process is after you've been found lease eligible by the management office, you'll then be invited to complete a program certification with SEB Housing. So that's the point in the process where you'll need to supply your income verifications and the documentation to confirm what you reported on your lottery application. So that might be pay stubs, tax returns, bank statements, that sort of thing. Once that screening is complete, you'll be put back in touch with the leasing office at the property to sign your lease. So if you haven't already, we invite you to go to our website, sebhousing.com. If you click on affordable housing opportunities and select I want to rent, you're going to see a page for the Enon, and you'll be directed to that page if you click on the Enon. And there's going to be a downloadable version of the application, an information packet. The information packet includes most of the information that I'll be mentioning during tonight's session. There's also going to be a hyperlink, so a jot form link for an online application for the lottery. We encourage you to complete the lottery application online since it will be the quickest way to apply and ensure that your application is received right away. Once you submit an online application, you'll receive a confirmation email instantaneously. If for any reason the online application is not an option for you, you can go ahead and download the PDF version of the application, or you can request a paper copy from us if that's easiest for you to complete. And if you're completing the paper application, there's several different ways you can submit it to us. Emailing it to us as an attachment to an email, regular mail. If you're in the Needham area, you can drop it off at our address, which is on the first page of that application with more information. But again, we do encourage you to fill it out online if you can. And you're encouraged to submit your lottery application as soon as you know that you're interested in this opportunity. It's fairly brief, shouldn't take you all that long to complete because, again, there's no supporting documentation that's needed at this early stage. That would only be required later in the lottery if you're one of the top households on the waiting list. So you don't need to submit anything to us other than that self-reported lottery application. So applications are due by December 3rd, and they have to be submitted to us by 2 p.m. that day to be considered for the lottery. And the online application, you can see on your screen right now the online link for the Jot Form lottery application. That will shut down at 2 p.m. on December 3rd. So again, just make sure that you get the information into us before then. You do not need to be a resident of Beverly to apply for this lottery. However, the affordable 2-bedroom unit is going to have local preference on the waiting list, which I'll talk about a little bit more later on. It should not deter anyone who doesn't live in town from applying. And I'll talk about that again just a few minutes later. So it's expected that these apartments are going to be available immediately following the lottery and all of the screenings once you have completed the applicant screening. So the Enon is a rehabilitation of an existing property. So our understanding is that it's been completely renovated, meaning inside and out. As you can see, it looks like a new building on your screen, but also inside, it's basically a new building altogether. The property is in close proximity to public transportation, the North Beverly commuter rail, shops and restaurants in the area, and 2 of the apartments will be made available to households who have total household income at or below 60% of the area median income for this process. One of the units has 1 bedroom, 1 bath. The other has 2 bedrooms and 1 bath. And tenants will be responsible for paying their own utilities, which include electric cooking, electric heating, electric hot water, electricity, and then cold water and sewer. 1 parking space is included in the rent for all of the affordable residents. There's 13 total units within the building, so 11 of them are market rate. The affordable units are on the top floor of the building. There's no elevator. The units are on the 3rd floor off the ground. There is a fourth story, which is the basement level. So there's 4 stories total if you count that basement, and these affordable units are both on the top floor. The affordable rents are not set in accordance with an applicant's income. If your income changes, the rents will not change for this property. So these are set rents. So the 1-bedroom unit, the affordable rent is $1,427, and the 2-bedroom unit will go for $1,524. The rents can increase once per year. Usually that is around the springtime when the Housing and Urban Development, the Federal Housing and Urban Development Office revises their area median income. Advance notice would always be given to tenants whenever a rent increase occurs, and your rent could not increase within the first year or any lease term. So it would need to be ahead of a lease renewal. We know that there's going to be more interested households and eligible households than there are available units. There's only these 2 units available, and this is already a very popular lottery because, again, it's the 60% AMI unit, so your income can be a little bit lower than some of these other affordable units that we have in lotteries. So to move on to the eligibility requirements of this affordable housing program. So all of this information is in the information packet. There's 4 eligibility criteria for the affordable housing program. The first being that households have to qualify based on their income. So again, this lottery is only open to households who have a total household income, annual income of at or below 60% of the area median income. Those amounts are on your screen now. The maximum incomes are on your screen, and I'll circle back to those in just a second. The second item to keep in mind for eligibility purposes is that household priority will be given based on household composition. So, for example, if you're a one-person household or a couple that shares a bedroom, you're generally going to be considered a type 1 household. You'll see this on your application explained a little bit more as well. You can apply for the 2-bedroom unit, but the larger type 2 households are going to have priority on the waiting list over any type 1 household. And the reason for that is just that the affordable housing program is designed so that households who may not require all of the bedrooms in a unit don't have priority for those units when compared to households who may need that extra bedroom. Another eligibility criteria is that households can't own a home upon move-in. So if you own a home right now, it would need to be sold prior to completing a certification with SDB Housing later on down the line. And then finally, this doesn't come up very often, but applicants can't have financial interest in the development or be considered a related party. So if you work for the management company or the developer, you might not be eligible for this lottery. And then to circle back, like I said, on the first eligibility criteria, the income limits, so the maximum income limits that you see on your screen for household sizes 1 through 4. Since these units are going to be made available to rent at prices that are lower than the identical or very similar market rate units within the building, these are the income limits that are set in place so that only qualified households are able to rent these affordable units. So if you're looking at that right now, if you're a one-person household, you would need to make your total household income for the year would need to be at or below $62,538 in order for you to be eligible for this lottery. It is the gross income that we're required to count for this program. And, we realize that most people do not get their gross income that's shown on their pay stubs. That's the amount before taxes, all of that. But that is what we must count for determining your eligibility. How we calculate your income is not one size fits all. So everyone's income circumstances are unique. So some applicants have that weekly salary that's consistent throughout the year. But there's other people who are self-employed or work seasonally. And in those circumstances, we might need to look further into the past in order to project your anticipated income for the next 12 months. And then specifically for households who are self-employed, you'll need to complete a profit and loss statement and provide supporting documentation for your business. So if you're self-employed, your business expenses will be taken into account. But if you're not self-employed, it is that gross income that we need to consider. When you fill out your application, if you are found eligible for the lottery, you'll be sent a link to a documentation requirements guide, which is basically something that SDB Housing has put together to assist you in gathering all the information you might need if you're one of the top households on the waiting list following the lottery. So it'll let you know how many pay stubs you might need to send to us eventually, how many bank statements, that sort of thing. So you can have all of that sort of gathered together after the lottery. And in general, any income that you have been making, we need to assume that you're going to continue to be making it in the coming year, unless we have something definitive, maybe from your employer, saying that your hours have been reduced or overtime is not going to be available in the coming year, that sort of thing. When you're filling out your application, make sure that you complete it showing all of your income. So not just wages, but if you have someone in your household who is also earning Social Security benefits, pension, payments, workman's compensation, unemployment, that sort of thing. Make sure that those are all accounted for on there. There is no minimum income for the affordable housing program. But as you can see on your screen right now, I do have the approximate minimum income that are required for by the management team at Enon. So the team there wants to make sure that all tenants, regardless of whether or not they're renting a market rate or affordable unit, they want to make sure that you can afford the rent. And that's why they've set a minimum income of 2.5 times the monthly rent. So as you can see, in order to rent a 1-bedroom, your minimum income would be $42,800. So if you were looking to rent a 1-bedroom as a 1-person household, your income would need to be roughly between that $42,800 and $62,538 in order to qualify for this lottery. The only exception to that is voucher holders. So if you have a mobile housing voucher like Section 8 or MRVP, you can disregard the minimum incomes because they're not going to apply to you. That's because your housing agency is going to be picking up part of the rent expense for your family based on your voucher. But everyone else would need to make between the minimum income floor and this maximum income limit. Another exception could be that maybe you have a lot of assets in bank statements, the liquid assets that are available to you. The management team at the property might see that and be able to qualify you based on the fact that you have those assets that you might be able to draw down on to pay the rent. There is no, speaking of assets, there's no asset limit for rental opportunities. So you might have a significant amount of assets in the bank. You might be retired, for example. There is no asset limit. We still will need to collect information related to your assets, though, and that's because any income that's being generated by your assets, we would need to count towards your total household income when determining your eligibility. When we talk about assets, it's not just checking and savings accounts, but the net cash value of any 401ks you have, CDs, your Venmo, PayPal accounts, that sort of thing, stocks, bonds. We would not need documents regarding personal assets such as cars or jewelry, just really the assets that could be earning interest. So in terms of lottery eligibility, as I said before, we encourage you to apply as soon as possible if you're interested in this opportunity. We also want to mention that if you are interested in more than one unit size, so there's a 1-bedroom and a 2-bedroom for these affordable units, if you think you might be interested in both, you should indicate that on your application. There's really no downside to doing that. There is a potential downside if you only apply for 1 unit size and then decide later on that you're interested in a 2-bedroom, for example. And that's because the waiting list will already be established at that point, and you don't want to be at the bottom of the waiting list if you could have been included on both of those before the lottery. So if you've already submitted your lottery application and you do want to change it and apply to both before the lottery or before the lottery takes place, you can do that. Just let us know. So once we receive your application, we will contact you if there's any information missing. You'll receive the automatic email if you send it by the online application, but that is just a confirmation email from you. If you're found eligible for the lottery after SCB Housing has reviewed your application, you'll be sent another email with your lottery application number, which will be in the form of A.001, for example. If you're the first person to receive a lottery application number for this opportunity, you'll have that number, A.001. It's not a ranking of any sort at this point. It's just an anonymous identifier, so your name isn't called out during the lottery. So you want to hold on to that email so you have that lottery application number. You also want to review the email pretty thoroughly, because it's also going to confirm if you reported having local preference. So if you're a resident of Beverly or someone in your household works full-time in Beverly, or if you have a child going to school full-time in Beverly, you might qualify for the local preference that the 2-bedroom waiting list will have. You want to make sure that you're filling that out correctly, because you will need to confirm with supporting documentation after the lottery. You'll have to confirm that you're a resident of the town. That email that you receive with your lottery application number, it's also going to confirm what bedroom size you applied for. So take a look at that, make sure it looks correct, and that documentation requirements guide that I mentioned will be attached to the email as well to give you a heads up of what information SCB Housing will be requesting from you after the lottery if you're one of the top households that will be moving forward from the waiting list to move on to the lease eligibility portion. If at any point during the process you receive an email from SCB Housing that's saying you're ineligible for the lottery, maybe you're over income, under income, let us know. You're encouraged. If you have any questions, please let us know about that. The lottery itself will take place on December 18th at 6 p.m. And more information about the lottery will be sent in your eligibility email. But keep in mind that you're not required to be present for the lottery. It is going to be similar to this format. It's going to be a Zoom call, screen sharing the results, and you can see the drawing take place. But like I said, during the lottery itself, you're not going to know a whole lot about where you place on the waiting list. And that's because all lottery numbers are going to be drawn during the lottery. But after the fact, we need to sort those results onto the waiting list for the 1 and 2 bedrooms. So in general, it's beneficial for your number to be called earlier in the lottery, but you're going to be mixed in there. Maybe you're a type 2 household, you're mixed in there with type 1 households. We're going to have to do all of that sorting after the fact. And what our goal always is to send you an email that night after the lottery with the waiting list attached to them and sorted, so you're able to see where you fall on the waiting list shortly after the lottery. When you're reviewing that email, you're going to look for your lottery application number so you can find it on the waiting list. And at that point, you'll have a better idea as to whether or not you might be moving forward to the next step in the process, which is to apply for a lease with the leasing office. Following the lottery, you'll be in touch with the management team over at the Enon. And at that point, you'll be going through their lease eligibility process. You'll have about 5 days to get that done with them. And if you are found lease eligible and you reserve either the 1 bedroom or the 2 bedroom unit, you'll be then referred back to SCB Housing to do your program screening. Just a reminder too that during the lease screening with the management team, there's only 2 units, but they're likely going to screen more than 4 or even 6 households to try to get these units leased. Management companies often do this because the process of leasing units is slowed down by households who either don't qualify or are no longer interested in the opportunity or unresponsive to emails. So just be aware that you might be screened by them and then ultimately not be able to rent one of the units if the person ahead of you on the waiting list ends up following through. So once your lease approved, like I said, you'll be referred back to SCB Housing, and you will then need to submit your income asset tax documentation that will be required so we can do your program eligibility review. So hopefully by that point, you've taken a look at the documentation requirements guide, and you've started to gather all the information that you need to send in, like pay stubs and so forth. There's a lot of information that needs to come in, so it's understandable if maybe on the first attempt to get all of your stuff into us, you don't have everything, and that is perfectly fine. We will work with you to make sure we get a completed application from you and all the pay stubs we need and that sort of thing. Once we do approve your file, you'll be notified, and eligible households are going to be able to then go back to the leasing office and sign a lease, establish a move-in date, whatever date works for you, and the management team, and you'll be able to move in. Like I said, these units are available, or expected to be available soon after the lottery takes place. There shouldn't be much waiting once you have completed all of the screenings that you need to do. If you wanted to lease up right away, you should be able to do that after the screenings are finished. Once you're leased, you're done with income screenings until your lease renewal date. So about 3 months before the lease renewal, we hope that you have enjoyed living in the property and you want to continue doing so. If you do, you need to recertify your income with the leasing office, and they usually start the process about 3 months ahead of time. If your income has increased during the year and you're now making above that 60% of AMI amount, that's perfectly fine. Households are going to remain eligible for the affordable housing apartment for as long as the household income doesn't exceed 120% of the current year's area median income. So to give you a kind of a little bit of a idea of what that means, if a household of two would qualify for this affordable housing lottery with an income of at or below $71,472, that same family could make up to about $100,000 at the time of the recertification in order to remain eligible to rent the affordable apartment. So a little bit of wiggle room there if you have a raise or a job change or anything like that that is going to mean a higher income for your family. That's about all I wanted to cover from the information packet and just on the process itself. Again, if you're watching this after the fact and if you have any questions for us, please feel free to reach out to us at info@sdbhousing.com. This is the link again to the online application. This is on our website as well. It's on all the marketing materials that you may have seen as well. You're encouraged to submit that online application. If you'd rather have a paper application, please reach out to us at info@sdbhousing.com and we can get that over to you. And I appreciate you watching this and have a good night.